fact, I'm going to shift this one down onto a lower track. I'm going to try and keep my whooshes on VFX 1 for now, just so it's easier to keep organised. So we have... this is a mono whoosh recording. Let's cheat it. Cool, and we'll come back to that later. This is quite a nice low one. So let's put that in around here. And I'll get another one in there. I want something a little bit higher. That's a bit too high. Okay. There. So now what we've got, let's just take a listen to the kind of progression of the whooshes we're putting down, and we'll go back and get their volume just so. So this one needs to be shifted a little bit higher, I think. So let's get all of these right. So let's try normalizing these. I'm going to normalize them to about -7. Cool. And then what I want to do is I want to make this one in the center a little bit higher to bridge the gap between these two. So let's try 2 and see what happens. Getting closer, let's try 3. That's getting a little bit closer, let's try 4. Cool, and I might just slow this one down ever so slightly. Cool. So I like the progression between these three. There, and then we've now got to go through and put the other Foley, the other bits of sound design in there. I've got the dripping water, I've got the sock being pulled on, and then I've got the laces being pulled and tightened, and I've got a sound effect for each of those that I've found online. So in my montage folder, I've got all of the bits of sound design that I believe I need for this section, and let's go ahead and start laying this down. Right, let's get started. So first is the dribbling water. So let's see what I've got here in my montage for scene 1. Metal, compass, weights. Here we go. I've got pouring water into a mug of instant coffee, and there's a nice little trickling. It does kind of raise and pitch a little bit. What else have I got? I've got... Okay, that's not right. No, that's not quite right either. That's not right either. So I'm going to use the coffee mug one. Depends if you found whatever it is you want. Here again, just take a look at all the websites and see if you can find a decent sound effect. Now I've already got my I/O set on this one. So, I'm going to put this in number 2. Cool, and literally about there. Cool, so you can see the shape this is taking now, yeah? Whoosh, pouring water. Now the water's a bit loud, so I want to bring it down. That's a bit quiet. And it's a bit high, so I also want to bring the pitch down a little as well. Okay, let's try it with 1. Okay, that's beginning to sound all right. See if the scents do anything. Okay, if I bring the scents right down, I get an easier, I say easier, I get a slightly less extreme effect, so... And that sounds about right to me, maybe minus 50 or 60 cents as opposed to a semitone. Cool. I quite like that. It sounds a little bit thin, so I might copy paste it and see if stacking it up. There we go. That's better. It sounded just a little bit thin and a little bit watery, but you know what I mean. So I might now just tone these two down just a little bit to compensate, but it will fill out and it will fatten out the sound because it was a little bit pilly-wally before. Cool. I like that now. I like that as a sound effect. So let's take a look back here. Cool. And then I need the noise for the sports sock being pulled up. So, and yeah, you're going to hear a lot of very repetitive audio whilst you're doing this and whilst I'm demonstrating it as well, I'm afraid. So the next thing I want is the canvas creak. No, that's the rope. What I want is somebody. Maybe it was in the soundscape. No, definitely in the montage. Fingers rub on canvas. So this is someone rubbing their fingers along rough canvas cloth, but I can do a little work on this and make it sound A, quite quiet, and B, like it's the cloth rubbing against his skin as he pulls up the compression sock he's wearing. There's another one, but this is much, much longer. And maybe that first bit works, actually. I'm going to put an out point there, and let's start with this. And it's also mono, which is frustrating for a sound effect. Okay, so A, it's too slow. So it needs to end about there, so I really want to speed this up. So clip 200, I'm going to maintain pitch and then trim this down. Now, do you see where this is going? Yeah, that's beginning to look and sound right. It's a bit loud and it's too high, and I might do the kind of fill out trick down here again. But let's just bring that down a little bit. And I might bring it back a little bit. Just there we go. I like that timing. So let's go into the inspector and we'll try a semitone, see what we think. Okay, let's try the scents. Okay. Okay, that's beginning to sound a bit better. And that's more or less synced up, so cool. A little bit loud. Cool. And let's just see if stacking that up double helps us. I like that. That adds an extra little bit of depth to that sound, so I'm going to get them both and put them at minus 12 because they are stacking up again. Cool, that's good. Cool, and then we've got that little whoosh there whilst we get the laces being tightened down. So let's take a look at what we've got, or let's you take a look at what you've got in the all the different bits of sound design that you picked up. So I have rope being pulled. That's different. So I've got 3 different ropes being pulled tight. I quite like this one. I think I'm going to have to keyframe this because it gets a bit too loud at the end. But I believe I can work with this. So let's get this down here. And of course it is mono. And it's going to need to be made faster, so I'm going to go to change clip speed. We'll try 150 to begin with. Okay, that's getting a little bit closer, so let's... Ooh, give me a second. Okay, cool, so that's there. Let's shift the pitch and then I'll go back in and I'll keyframe this. I just want to see what pitch shifting does to this, because I suspect making it higher might make it sound a bit echoey and tinny. No, okay. You pitch shift to that point, it's going to sound very artificial. Nah, okay, fine. So we want to keep it around 3. Cool. Now, I want this to sound quite quiet. I really don't want it to be very loud at all because the noise... Okay, that's a little bit better. And then, even though it's quite quiet, I do just want to... Oh, it's because I'm going subframe, okay. Cool, that just levels it out a little bit. Okay, so let's just listen to what we've got so far. Cool, and then we've got the weight rack and we've got other bits of noise that we need to replace as well. So the whoosh 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 bit is coming along quite nicely. We've got our background here, so that might be the weakest of the 3, but I think it works for now. Let's take a look at what else we've got. We need to do the sound for this weight rack because it had a very electrical whine in the background, so we need to find a better sound. So I've got some recordings of a weight rack being inserted. In fact, that's a weight. What I'm looking for is the pin. So let's try this and see what we think. So that's a little bit clattery. Let's see if we can find a different one. Okay, maybe I can look at the other recording. So I've got the bolt being pulled out as well, but nobody's going to know. Let's see. That might work. Let's see if this one works. I think that works because we get a little bit of a scrape and then it gets pushed in, and that works pretty well. I think I might trim that last little clatter out and see how that plays. Okay, maybe not then, it needs to finish. So let's make that a little bit quieter. And I'm going to drop the pitch by 1 because it's a little bit tinny. Okay, maybe I'll just bring the sense down a little bit. There we go. That just sounds a little bit more grounded. And we can try the double up trick as well. And then we'll bring both of those down by 3. There we go. We've got a much more present kind of meaty sound going on there. Now we probably want a little bit of noise from Wayne because obviously it's a bit weird if he's completely silent. And then we've got another bit of audio to put in. And then we've got this room tone issue to think about, and then we are at the end of the first scene. So there's been quite a lot of work in setting this all up, and we're still going to take another look at the room tone, the kind of background soundscape of this scene as well, because just having drones makes it sound a little flat. I want to add a little bit more kind of interest in there. But first things first, let's take a look at some different takes of Wayne, and I'll tell you what I'm going to do, because I know that this had some good noise of him groaning. I'm going to right click this rush, I'm going to choose Find in Media Pool, and I'm going to look around these different takes of the weightlifting. That's a good one. That's a nice mild one. So let's go back to, because obviously he's not opening his mouth or anything, and I'll just drag this down. And I want to drag this onto a dialogue track, and specifically onto Wayne's dialogue track. Okay, I want to speed this up as well. Okay, cool. So I've got the groan there. I probably want to change the speed of this. Very important that I keep this one pitch corrected, because otherwise it's going to go a bit wrong. And let's try 130. Cool. I'm going to leave a bit of overlap here. And that actually blends into our room tone very nicely. Cool. So that works quite nicely there. And now we've got to do the other weight machine pin. So there was like a two-step clanky one that we turned down before. I'm going to go back into my montage. And see if this one fits. So and I'm going to obviously put it in a VFX track, and it's a stereo recording, so it's fine. Okay, so this first bit is okay. The second bit's a bit premature, so I'm just going to split it and then retime it like there. I'm not getting much in the way of background noise or room tone from these recordings. They're very clean and very nice to work with. Cool. And that now, oops, That now gives me a nice bit there. Now I should probably put these on a lower track because I want to reserve track 1 for whooshes and things. And then I will... That second one's a little bit loud. I might bring that down just a bit. Cool. And on both, I'm probably going to drop the pitch just a little bit. Okay. Cool. That sounds good to me. I'm not going to bother doubling these up. I don't think they need it. But otherwise, I think that's pretty good. So let's take a look. Okay, maybe these both a bit too low now. Cool. So this is really beginning to take shape, and we can hand this over to an audio specialist and they'll see what we're aiming for. Let's just go back and watch this one more time. Cool, so I like this. I think it's actually taking quite a nice shape, this goofy little montage. It takes a lot of effort to really sell it, and more than anything else, I genuinely hope you're gaining a newfound appreciation for sound people now, because they are really undervalued and they do very good work. And believe me, their craft goes 1,000 times technically deeper than this does. Ugh. The panning law, that's nothing. That's only a very basic version of the panning law. It gets a lot more involved when you're doing broadcast work.